I love Black Sabbath for that. Black Sabbath, their more epic songs are structured that way. War Pigs, Hand of Doom, they're all structured like that. Wow, man. What a great album. It's my first time actually really listening to it from beginning to end as an adult. I think when I was in my pre-teens, I've heard the whole album, and I was exposed to the whole album multiple times, but I, of course, didn't really sit long enough for a song like this. I was more about School, Bloody Well Right, Dreamer, and Hide in Your Shell. And then everything else on a more serious note like this, more cerebral note like this, I would completely tune out, and then, as where a kid is concerned, get busy doing other things, right? My attention wasn't there. But yeah, man, focusing on it now, great, powerful album, great album. Definitely one of the best ever. Hey man, Supertramp, I really have my fingers crossed in regards to YouTube. I'm worried as hell. I really hope that it will be accepted, Here's hoping, here's crossing my fingers. And what I used to do in the past, when I was first starting out, didn't realize this, I would do what I call tests, and just take a track and just kind of upload it by itself without the reaction and all of that work built around it, just to see what the algorithm would do. And unbeknownst to me, because it's still attached to my account, I can still get a copyright strike just for that alone. So regardless of if you had your entire edited your finished edits and all of that stuff attached to that particular piece of material, it doesn't matter. You will still suffer a strike, right? I didn't know that. Anyway, I used to conduct these little tests, and then I got a warning one time saying, hey, we see that you're doing these little tests and stuff, so stop that shit, because you can still get a strike. I remember that. That was in the first couple of weeks of getting onto YouTube, trying to find my way. Anyway, man, hey, it is what it is, man. So yeah, fingers crossed. Let's we hope that YouTube will be a little bit more accommodating for Supertramp content. We'll see. So this is the end of side 2, man. Excellent album. I'm going to go into the review portion right now, and I want to do a little bit of background. An album this great definitely has a serious amount of information to learn. Definitely has some serious history, and it'll be great to put my mind or myself into the minds of the artists and their experiences and their motivations for writing and their inspirations and all of that sort of thing, man. The juice of the fiber that feeds. So, crime of the century. Yeah, decent amount of information. Yeah, I'm not going to read it all. I'll bounce around a little bit. I'll start with general info, background info, and then go to some song info, and then I'll finish off with release and critical reception. Yeah, let's do that. Alright, Crime of the Century. Crime of the Century is the third studio album by English rock band Supertramp, released in September of '74 on A&M Records. Crime of the Century was Supertramp's commercial breakthrough in both the US and UK, aided by the UK hit Dreamer and the US hit Bloody Well Right. It was a UK Top 10 album and a US Top 40 album, eventually being certified gold in the US in '77 after the release of Even in the Quietest Moments. The album has received critical acclaim, including its inclusion in Rolling Stone's 50 Greatest Progressive Rock Albums of All Time. The album's dedication reads to Sam, which is a nickname for Stanley August Masegas, the Dutch millionaire who supported the band financially from 1969 to '72. I'm sure you were well compensated. Background recording. After the failure of their first two albums and an unsuccessful tour, Supertramp broke up. Rick Davies and Roger Hodgson recruited new members, drummer Bob C. Benberg, woodwinds player John Hallowell, and bassist Dougie Thompson. Their record label, A&M, in particular A&R man Dave Murchison, who would become their manager for the next 10 years, sent this new lineup to 17th Century Farm in West Dorset in order to rehearse together and prepare the album. The album was recorded at several studios, including Ramport Studios, owned by The Who, and Trident Studios with co-producer Ken Scott. While recording the album, Davies and Hodgson recorded approximately 42 demo songs, from which only 8 were chosen to appear on the album. Several other tracks appeared on later albums. Due to a contractual agreement, all the songs are credited jointly to the two writers, but some of the songs were written individually. Scott commented that Davies and Hodgson were very, very different personalities. Those differing personalities made the music sound the way it did. Asylum, Rudy, and Bloody Well Right were written by Davies. Dreamer, If Anyone Was Listening, and Hide in Your Shell were written by Hodgson, and both School and Crime of the Century are Davies-Hodgson collaborations. Hodgson remarked of Hide in Your Shell, quote, "I was 23 when I wrote that song, confused about life, and like a lot of people are at that age, trying to hide my insecurities. I've always been able to express my innermost feelings more openly in song, and Hide in Your Shell came to me at a time when I was feeling very lonely both in life and within the band, with no one who shared my spiritual quest," unquote. Dreamer was composed by Hodgson on his Wurlitzer piano at his mother's house when he was 19 years old. At that time, he recorded a demo of the song using vocals, Wurlitzer, and banging cardboard boxes for percussion. Hodgson recalled, quote, "I was excited. It was the first time I laid hands on a Wurlitzer." Supertramp cut their own recording of the song in imitation of the early demo. Also, Hodgson stated on In the Studio with Redbeard while talking about the making of the album that the band had difficulty recreating the song when recording it. The album was named after the final song, Crime of the Century, which the band members felt was the strongest song in the album. Shortly after his departure from Supertramp, Hodgson commented, quote, "I've had many people come up to me and say that that song touched them more deeply than any other. That song really came together when we were living together at Southcombe Farm, Thorncombe, and just eating, sleeping, and breathing the ideas for the album. The song just bounced between Rick and I for so many weeks before it finally took form." For unknown reasons, in several interviews, both before and since, Hodgson has attributed the song as being written solely by Davies. Okay. Hodgson describes School as my song, basically, but admits that Davies wrote both the piano solo and a good deal of the lyrics. Interviewed by Jeff Parrott of Acoustic Storm in 2010, Hodgson confirmed that the song was based on his experience at boarding school and said of the girl's scream, quote, "Everything, especially that scream that you're talking about, just before the band comes in, does represent a lot. I mean, you know, school is a wonderful place. Obviously, it's a school playground, but that scream does represent a lot," unquote. I think that a lot part he's talking about is probably just triggering specific memories, you know, just taking him back to a specific time, how he was feeling and all that. Is just giving him a laser pinpoint focus on certain things that he's remembering. Hodgson and Davies both stated that communication within the group was at a peak during the recording of this album, while drummer Seinenberg stated that he thought it was this album on which the band hit its artistic peak. Crime of the Century deals loosely with themes of loneliness and mental stability, but is not a concept album. Davies consciously linked the opening track, School, to Bloody Well Right with the line, "So you think your schooling is phony." And according to Hodgson, any unifying thread beyond that was left to the listener's imagination. Okay. All right. So let's just read the last two paragraphs here for reception. Reception. In '78, Crime of the Century was ranked 108th in the World Critics List, which recognized the 200 greatest albums of all time as voted for by notable rock critics and DJs. Village Voice critic Robert Christgau was ambivalent towards the album's straight-ahead art rock, which he called, quote, "Queen without preening. Yes, without pianistics and meter shifts," unquote. Adam Thomas's retrospective review in Sputnik Music described it as one of the better albums of the 1970s for its powerful expression of young adult confusion and alienation, and for its consistent contrast between progressive and pop elements. All right. In the 1987 edition of the World Critics List, CBC's Jeff Edwards ranked Crime of the Century the 10th greatest album of all time. A 1998 public poll aggregating the votes of more than 200,000 music fans saw Crime of the Century voted among the all-time top 1,000 albums, and it was listed in the 2005 book 1001 Albums You Must Hear Before You Die. In 2015, it was chosen as the 27th greatest progressive rock album by Rolling Stone. Paul Elliott of Classic Rock magazine called it a progressive rock masterpiece. All right, and that is Wikipedia Song Fact Info on Crime of the Century, this fantastic album. Props to you, Janine. Thank you very much for the recommendation. And yeah, man, solid album. Great album. You can't rank too many albums higher than this one. I really liked it. Certain ways it was so cerebral, it kind of took me into Pink Floyd sometimes, you know? Could you imagine if Floyd and Supertramp got together and formed a supergroup for a while, kicked out a couple of albums together? Man, that would be something, wouldn't it? Or maybe not. Let me know what you think of that. But yeah, man, hey, overall, fantastic album. Very solid. I got my favorite songs off of this, of course. But in general, man, the whole album is fantastic. And I would completely give it a straight listen from beginning to end without skipping anything. That's how I know that I really like an album, man. So I'm just scrolling down here to my notes before I bounce. Yeah, so what I got coming up this week, I just finished a quad, some live material from Bob Dylan. Thank you again, Maurice. That was Maurice's quad. And I'm going to be hitting up a Dylan album probably starting tomorrow. And more than likely, it's pointing towards Blonde on Blonde. And I know already, many of you have told me that Blonde on Blonde is a double album. So that's going to be about 4, maybe 5 videos in total. So I'm bracing myself for that and trying to see if I can free up some time in order to get that in. Hopefully not stretching it out for too many days. So that's the goal where Dylan is concerned. Artist of the Month is still going strong. And I'm really digging a walk back to my youth through the sounds of Bob Dylan. I wasn't aware that I was, I'm not going to say well versed, but I just have memories attached to the Bob Dylan content. I didn't know it until I started listening, and you know, these things started coming back to me in visions and all of these memories and connecting, and then I started saying to myself, it's taken me back to the years of my dad when he was a welder and he had all of his buddies and all of his friends and all of these things. And so it's a really great throwing back to my youth, going through the Bob Dylan chronology. So I'm really enjoying Bob Dylan month, man. Supertramp, same effect on me, taking me back to a certain time. I was a touch older in my preteens and hanging out with my buddy and listening to the music of his older brother. So yeah, that's the memory of this particular album. Supertramp Down the Road, I'm gonna wait and see how YouTube treats this particular album, and then go from there. Hopefully I don't get another copyright strike, man. So that's 2, you know, 1 more pinch and that's it for Soul Train Bro on YouTube. I'm gonna have to start up another channel if I get 3. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna focus on quads over the next couple of days for the classic rock platform. I got Joseph, Alan, Francesca, Greg, Tammy, Vernon, Jeff. Got you guys loaded for the next couple of days. Zeppelin is a couple of days away, hitting that in the weekend. I won't have time this week to do anything with the rest of the Unholy Trinity full album reaction, so I'll carry that into next week. What else was I gonna tell you, man? Yeah, I think that's it. Those are my notes, man. So I'm focusing on Bob Dylan, trying to get as much in as possible. I'm looking at 10 reactions in total for the month, but maybe I can squeeze in a few more, especially in the way of perhaps quads. We'll see. I'm still going back and forth with the patrons, sending out a couple of polls and questionnaires. And so from one reaction to another, it could take the form of a quad. It could take the form of another full album reaction. We'll see how that goes. But that's what I'm really focused on this month, man, is the last of the Artist of the Month series with Bob Dylan, and then focusing on my quads, getting as many out of the way as possible, and always making a little bit of room for my alternate channel that I just started up. So it's a busy month. Anyways, man, love this album. It was a fantastic listen. It took me back to my youth, and I really dig these songs. I'm gonna have to go back and re-listen and reconnect to all of them. Anyways, you guys have yourselves a good one, and I'll see you tomorrow in my next Bob Dylan reaction. Peace.